Lost Treasures of St. Louis. That's next on City Corner. I'm Steve Potter, and welcome to City Corner. There's a new book from Reedy Press, Lost Treasures of St. Louis, and it's really a journey through St. Louis history. Please welcome the authors who are with us today. That's Cameron Collins and Dennis Dillon. Gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Steve. Good to be here.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Good to see you again.
Yes.
It was, I guess, at least 6 years ago. You were here because, I think you were here since then, but 6 years ago, you came out with the first edition of this book. Mm-hmm. This is the second edition, so is it all new?
It is not all new, but it is drastically different than the first edition. We have, in the first edition, there were about over 400 lost treasures. In this one, we've added about 130 more. We did have to remove some to make a little room, but new design, new features, and a whole new section on St. Louis products. And, of course, a new co-author. Dennis Dillon.
Right. Dennis, why did they bring you in on this?
I'm still trying to figure that out. Actually, over the years, I had submitted some book ideas to Reedy Press, not knowing that they don't really like to do chapter narrative type books. So I guess I had called Josh Stevens so many times that my name was in vain, and he probably recalled it when they had to do the second edition, and we had kind of a short window to get it finished. And so I was happy that he called me, and I was glad to meet with Cameron. I think we hit it off right away, and it's been a great experience.
So you guys didn't know each other before this project?
No, not at all.
That's kind of interesting.
He didn't even know Josh.
No.
I was the first person Dennis met, but I can tell you that I was under a contract and I was late. And Josh, had told, we talked about it, and the first book was such a success, and it really resonated in St. Louis that we really wanted to make the extra effort to put it out this fall. And, of course, being the primary author of the first book, I was apprehensive at first, but bringing Dennis on board, not only did he offer a new perspective, but he was really brought other things to the table that really improved the book overall.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because the concept of the book, you say Lost Treasures, it's iconic places or things in St. Louis that are no longer here. It could have been a restaurant we grew up with, or somewhere where somebody played sports, or whatever it might be. Talk a little bit about what the concept is.
Well, it's places, restaurants, schools.
I think you've got like 5 different categories, don't you?
There's 8, I think.
8?
Really, there's 8 different sections.
Yeah, and even in the room out there, somebody was asking, is the Coral Court in there? Yeah, of course it's in there. Is the Admiral in there? And of course, but we also went and kind of dug behind the scenes and found some really kind of lost treasures that will even be historically significant that people will enjoy learning about.
That's one thing I found fascinating looking through the book. Not that I thought I knew everything about St. Louis, but there's so many things there that I remembered and sparked memories. But then there were so many things I weren't even on my radar.
Well, that's why they were lost treasures, I guess, because over time, the memory of them kind of fades away. And I know a lot of people at our presentations will put up an image of something that they remember from 30, 40, 50 years ago, and it brings back hopefully fond memories for them,
There's a phrase you use in your book, and I guess it applies to this: gone but not forgotten.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I'm assuming you both didn't know about all these places to begin with, did you?
So I'm not from St. Louis, and it was a very...
Neither is Dennis.
I am. Well, not originally, but I've been here long enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
But this is remarkable.
If you didn't go to, if you didn't go to high school here, you're not from St. Louis.
Oh, I went to high school here.
Oh, okay.
I did not. So it was a remarkable journey to I really cherish my memories of this book because I had to go out and talk to St. Louisans and I had to learn about what was unique about their upbringing and to learn about things like where did you go to high school and when I came to St. Louis, the Admiral was a casino.
Right.
And then to learn that it was a place where proms and Bob Cuban would play. It was really fascinating.
My mom went on dates there as a teenager.
How about the Top of the Tower restaurant in that? Yeah,
You've got a good.
a great story there. I met a gentleman who proposed to his wife in that restaurant, and she told me that she remembered that restaurant was so dark that she waited to get outside before she said yes because she wanted to make sure the ring was real. So it was stories like that just...
What I thought was so interesting when you say lost treasures, they're not all ancient ones. Like there could be something like my mom going to the Admiral, but there's also, there was something in there about a place that had just been closed a year or two, right?
Well, there are a lot of restaurants and bars, especially, that I think we noticed when we were doing research that have closed down post-pandemic.
Right.
And I think that was surprising to me, how many of those businesses had to fold.
Well, why don't we just jump into this? We've got some random images out of the book, and I want to share those with the audience, and you can kind of give me your thoughts and memories and why it's in the book to begin with.
Dennis, you take this one. This is one of his contributions, so it's
All
all
right.
you, my friend.
Okay, that is the Bayou Belle Restaurant. It was a seafood restaurant in Bridgeton, Missouri, located along the St. Charles Rock Road, and it went from about 1963 till maybe 74, 75.
Is that the one that burned?
That is the one that burned. But
What's the story there?
the story is that the owner grew up in a family of restaurant people, and he wanted to own his own restaurant someday. So he and his wife honeymooned in New Orleans, and he kind of fell in love with the city and wanted to bring back a flavor of New Orleans to St. Louis. So they ended up buying a parcel of farmland on St. Charles Rock Road in Bridgeton. And then he found this old 126-foot stern wheeler in the New Orleans Bayou.
Right.
It was just sitting there, and it was being used by a Pentecostal church community for their meetings. He ended up buying it for $8,000. So how do you get to there from St. Louis? It was towed up the Mississippi to where it meets the Missouri River, and then another towing company towed it west to the old St. Charles Rock Road Bridge.
Which was probably like the country out back then, wasn't it?
Yeah. And then they finally got it up on land and put it on a house mover. They had to take the smokestacks off because they were afraid they would hit the wiring on that. So then they moved it down to the place where he had bought, and they put it on this cement moat. And it needed a couple years to fix it up. And tragically, the owner one night was repainting the smokestacks. He lost his balance. He fell into that cement moat and suffered a massive brain injury. They took him to the hospital, and the next day he died.
Wow.
So he never even saw the opening of the restaurant.
Wow.
But you mentioned the fire. After 12 years, I think there was a fire that destroyed it. Fortunately, no one was hurt with that.
And that's just one story, folks. Let's take a look at the next image. These are lost treasures of St. Louis. That's an interesting looking place.
Take it away, Dennis. This is yours too. Another great story.
This was the Biltmore Club. Back during Prohibition, it would entertain the elite people from the St. Louis area. The high rollers, men in tuxedos, women in furs and diamonds.
Where was this?
I think it was located on Highway 30 about where there's a shopping center down there now, Bluffs, Gravoy Bluffs maybe.
Yep.
Interestingly, it sat on the boundary between St. Louis County and Jefferson County. And there was illegal gambling and illegal serving of alcohol going on in a room behind the steel enforced doors
Wow.
that were guarded. Occasionally, it would get raided. And if it was raided by the St. Louis County people, the patrons were instructed to move over to the Jefferson County side of the room. And if it was Jefferson County gendarmes that came in, they told them to go over to the St. Louis County.
Imagine that happening now.
Yeah, probably not.
Let's take a look at another image before we break here. There we go.
This is an old one, Bloody Island, which is no longer in the river, but St. Louisans may remember nobody will remember this today, but this is where dueling used to happen. And we had the famous Thomas Hart Benton duel that occurred on Bloody Island. Dennis, you got anything to add to that? This one was yours as well.
Yeah, Thomas Hart Benton and I think it was Charles Lucas. I know his last name was Lucas.
Yep.
They got into some disputes and got to the point where they said, all right, let's take it to the Bloody Island. And this island, it was originally like a sandbar, but it grew so much, it was a mile long and 500 feet wide, and they grew some trees and everything. And it was in the middle between Missouri and Illinois, so no one claimed it, so it was a neutral site. So they had a duel there. The first one, Benton got shot in the knee and Lucas got shot in the throat. They both survived. But then a little later, they got into another dispute. They went back over to Bloody Island, and this time Benton killed Lucas.
And it's all underwater now.
Yes.
I think Lucas was extra upset because Benton referred to him as a puppy.
Yes. Yes.
So
That was one of the things he
Well, that's
said.
worth a duel.
yeah.
Let's take a look at one more real quickly. Wow.
Yeah, this is, so amusement parks play a big role in the book. Of course, Forest Park Highlands, the famous, which stood not far from here. And also, this is Chain of Rocks amusement park, which kind of exciting. They seem to be redeveloping that area.
Up near the Chain of Rocks Bridge is
Yeah,
where
up
that
near
was.
the Chain of Rocks Bridge. And also other amusement parks like Holiday Hill, in places, where today we have Six Flags, but back in the day, you could select from a variety of different amusement parks.
And
in
Route
the area.
66 went right through there too, right?
Yeah.
So that must have been something. What was the most fun of writing this book?
It's discovering these things that I never knew before, researching them and coming up and learning all these stories behind these places and people and landmarks, and that was the most fun for me.
All right, well, we're going to take a short break and pick up where we left off. So it's Lost Treasures of St. Louis, and we'll have more City Corner right after this.
There's so many reasons to love St. Louis, you can't pick just one. From the arts, architecture, and culture. An all-new development, including the Cortex Community Center. And you're never too far from great music and entertainment.
So come and experience St. Louis. you need to do something to feel okay to drive, you're not okay to drive. Don't drive buzzed.
I'm Steve Potter, and welcome back to City Corner, where we're talking with Cameron Collins and Dennis Dillon. They have co-authored the book Lost Treasures of St. Louis. It's a second edition, and it's all about looking back at things from the recent past to the way back there past. Iconic things in St. Louis that aren't here anymore, from restaurants to parks to whatever it might be. And why don't we just jump right back into it and look at another image from the book and tell us which lost treasure this is. Well, that one I remember.
The floating McDonald's, always a favorite, but one of my favorite stories about the floating
And
McDonald's.
under the arch, we should say.
Yes.
The
is-
Golden Arch is under the arch.
Yes.
Right.
And we also had a floating Burger King for a while, but that didn't make the book. But what I loved about the floating McDonald's is for everybody who would tell me how much they loved it and miss it, there was somebody else who would say it was overpriced, your food smelled like the river, and so, lost treasures can bring opinions from all sides.
Different strokes for different folks. Let's look at another one real quickly.
That's from Flores Lanes that was located in North St. Louis. I'm not sure, was that one of the bowlers on the Budweiser?
I think that's Don Carter.
Yeah,
Yep.
I think you're right, yeah. In 1958, the Budweiser team of Don Carter, Ray Bluth, Tom Hennessy,
Dick
Dick
Weber.
Weber, and one other person who I am forgetting, rolled a record series at Flores Lanes, which was kind of a hole-in-the-wall bowling alley. It looked nothing like today's state-of-the-art bowling alleys that have all these lanes. It only had 16 lanes, and they were above a storefront. It was 8 on the second floor, 8 on the third floor, but
Wow.
it was famous for that record that was rolled.
Bowling was a big thing. People probably don't remember. I remember back 50s and 60s, my parents were the bowling teams and everybody did it. It was a big
Yeah.
thing. Cameron, I wanted to ask you something because in the dedication to your book, Lost Treasures of St. Louis, you write a little bit about your mom, Susan, and you said, you're not from here, you're from New York, that's where your mother was. Anyway, it's a long story. She ended up coming here late in life. But then there's a story about the postcard. So if you can kind of condense that story.
Sure, this was remarkable, and I'm not kidding. So I moved my mother here 5 years ago. She passed away in March of this year, and when I was gathering her things and so forth in August of this year to go home for her funeral service, I was going through her scrapbooks and I lifted up a tote, and staring at me from the bottom was a photo of the postcard of the Admiral. And as I've already mentioned, the Admiral was a casino when I was here, but here's a postcard that was mailed to my mother in 1958 of the Admiral from her father, a man I've never met. He died before I was born, but it was literally about a week before we went to print. And I called up right away and said, can we get this postcard in the book? And it still kind of brings I still get chills when I think about looking at that postcard. And I'd never seen my grandfather's handwriting before. And he talks about the Admiral he says, there's this amazing boat that goes up and down the river and maybe one day you will dance on its stage.
And little did he know that his grandson would write a book about it.
Yes. Yeah, it's really remarkable.
That's something. Wow. Let's look at another image from the book. And each one of these has a story like that.
Yeah, Dennis, I bet you have a lot of stories of this one.
This was the old Missouri Bar and Grill. It was in downtown St. Louis.
That's where all the big journalists hung out, right?
Exactly. The Globe Democrat.
It was right across the street almost.
It was right across the street from the Globe Democrat. And we worked, since we were the morning paper, we worked a night shift. We got off at 11:30, and often we'd we'd move our cars at dinner time, park them right next or in front of the Missouri Bar and Grill. So you had to go there. I mean, it was almost a right to do that. So the fun thing about this, it was very sports oriented. And one night, 2 sets of Major League umpires came out at the same time because of a fluke in the schedule. And they were telling so many good stories that the bartender that night turned off the lights at 1 a.m. and let us go into the back and stay there a little bit more. So
I heard stories like
a
that.
lot of fun nights. at
Yeah,
that
and you
place.
refer to it, I want to bring out, for years you worked at the St. Louis Globe-Democrat as a sports writer.
Correct, 12 years there, yeah.
Wow. Let's look at the next image.
We both know about this. You want to take some of it?
Well, we're probably going to have to admit that I'm not a Cardinal fan, though, which Dennis loves to razz me about. I was not allowed to root for anybody other than the Yankees because my grandmother said I couldn't come to dinner if I was not a Yankee fan.
I understand.
But I definitely have a great appreciation for the baseball history of this town. And usually I will just make sure I tell people I'm not a Cubs fan. And they'll still maybe buy the book, so hopefully. So.
This was a neat ballpark that was shared by both the Cardinals and the Browns for many years. In fact, they played the Streetcar World Series.
That was on North Kings Highway, right?
It was on Grand.
North Grand, right.
Yeah, off of I-70, Grand and Dodier. And the Cardinals, I think, won 6 World Series there. Stan Musial hit 5 home runs in a doubleheader. That was where Enos Slaughter made his mad dash from first to home to score the winning run.
What's there now?
It's a Boys and Girls Club, I believe.
Right.
There is a ballpark on this site, but I can also tell you that Babe Ruth hit one over the fences and broke a car dealership's window across the street.
Yeah, I've heard that story, yeah.
Let's go to the next image. That looks familiar.
You get this one. Yep, you take this one too, my friend.
It's the Ambassador Theater. A lot of people, when they see it, think it's the Fox.
That's
Theater.
kind of what I thought,
Yeah, this was a movie theater. It seated.
which the Fox was too, by the way.
Yes, yes. This was closer to downtown, and well, it was downtown, and seated 3,000. It had a Wurlitzer organ that cost, I think, $15,000. It was a place where originally they had just stage shows, and then finally they turned it into a movie theater. But like a lot of movie theaters in the area, it lost their patrons. People started moving out of downtown area, both living people, I mean, people that were living there and working there, and they tried to convert it to a concert hall, but I don't think there was much luck with that.
Is the building gone?
Yeah, they destroyed the building and the 22 floors above it. I'm not sure what is there now, do you know?
I don't, but
Yeah.
it's a theme of, and actually we have a lot of theaters and even movie theaters in the book as well, because today we have the Fox. And, we've seen, Stiefel is there and so forth, but I even remember last night at my presentation, I told people about the Missouri Theater, which still stands, and that was, many people don't know, that's where the Rockettes got their start.
Right.
Before they moved to Radio City Music Hall, they were called the Rockets here. But it just goes to show that St. Louis has such a history all over the place.
Let's take a look at another lost treasure. There you go.
Retail is, we haven't talked much about retail, but it's a big section of the book. Everything from shopping malls. We lost Crestwood recently. We lost, I think they just tore down Jamestown Mall. And then, of course, Village Square. And you got to note somebody did some shenanigans with the sign there.
And where exactly was that?
Up north, it was
at Lindbergh and 270, kind of at the corner there.
Yep.
It was an outdoor open-air mall shaped like a big L. And so they had stores that were kind of facing each other. They had one of the stores they had was a Goldie's shopping store. And when you walked in, there was a minor bird named Joe, and he knew how to cuss. So that's the kind of greeting you might get when you walked in there.
This is why we had to bring Dennis into the book,
So there are so many, I was going to say hundreds, but at least dozens. How many different topics are there in this book?
Oh, gosh. At
Well,
least 350, maybe close to
There's more than
400.
400 individual
Yeah.
lost treasures. And as we've seen, dating all the way back to the 1800s to places that we've lost just within the last couple years. So
Here's an example. I'm just kind of looking through the book here. We were talking about the old things, but here's something not so old. Vindiset, which is right off Lafayette Park in Choteau, I guess. And
Yeah.
that's only been closed a couple of years, I think.
maybe not even that. It closed due to a fire.
Right.
And sadly, that's a very historic building. That was Joseph Schneider's malt house, who in his beer garden is also in the book, which sat across the street in the late 1800s. You could go there and join about 10,000 other Germans having a stein of lager. But yeah, Vindiset sadly closed not too long ago.
And you got a section, a lot of like businesses, everything from like bee hats, whatever that is, B-E-E, bee hats, Listerine, Ready Whip. Those are from St. Louis?
Made in St. Louis, originally, yes.
That's part of the new section we added on St. Louis products. So we moved a lot of, things like sodas and of course beer, Falstaff and Stag. And
But I'm looking at a beer here that I've never heard of, 905.
yeah.
Tell me about that.
I love this. 905 was actually a pharmacy chain. And I think you can even buy Walgreens beer now or something, but 905 made their own beer. And there's a funny story of one time I did a presentation and somebody asked, what are some of the lost treasures you would have liked to see in your day? And for some reason I said, I'd like to taste a can of 905 beer. And a guy raised his hand and said, I worked for 905 and you did not want to drink a can of their beer. So always a story with all
But I
of
want to know
these.
why.
It was awful.
Taste, yeah.
I have some friends that would say there is no such thing as awful beer, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not an expert. Do you have any projects lined up ahead? Are you going to make a third edition maybe someday?
I don't know. We're still kind of decompressing from this one, but it was not difficult to find more lost treasures, and maybe we'll find more going forward.
Well, let's remind people that it's Lost Treasures of St. Louis. It's the second edition from Reedy Press. You can go to reedypress.com, and they'll probably have a list because I know you guys are doing little appearances all over town into next year and stuff too. So people could look that up, and if they want to meet you in person and get an autographed book, they could do that. So Lost Treasures of St. Louis, the second edition. We want to thank co-authors Cameron Collins and Dennis Dillon. And we just hit the tip of the iceberg. This is a fascinating book, and you could sit here for days and just go through it. So gentlemen, thank you for sharing with us today.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. It's a pleasure as always.
I'm Steve Potter, and thank you for joining us on City Corner. Remember, Lost Treasures of St. Louis. See you next time. Bye.